didn't touch the ball very much. Drive inside, get it out. Hello, T. That's a freshman. Looked like a promising drive there by Cayenne President, but.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to ESPN.TV. Back at you one more time. We're in the middle of January now as we get set to unveil our week number 3 CET Sports ESPN.TV 5A Top 10 polls. Along with Marty Cesari, I'm Brian Roth. Thanks for joining us again. And boy, we're now getting into conference play, and so should see some things shake up. Colorado Springs Metro League looks very, very tough. Continental League looks very tough, and I think you're going to have a dogfight up there in the Front Range League as well. But let's get to the top 10s on the boys' side at 1 through 5, and of course Regis right up there at the top. Rampart still there. Fort Collins and Chaparral, a couple of one-loss teams there. And Arapahoe out of the Centennial League, Marty. They sit at 11-2, and they check in at number 5 in our latest poll.
Yeah, and like you said, we're coming up on conference play. You mentioned Arapahoe, the Warriors. We're kind of getting a sense with the Centennial being down a little bit, and this applies to Chatfield, who we'll talk about in just moments. You know, with those two leagues down a little bit, we may be talking about a Warriors squad. They may not lose again. Obviously, Coach Snyder's got a system in place with Parker Seaman, Tim's Billingsley. He's got some players, but, you know, they are playing ball protection and a lot of defense. Just beat Eagle Crest this week, 35-27, just holding people down. And, I don't know if anybody's going to score on
Wow,
them.
how does that happen? 35-27 and only 13 points in the first half for the Warriors?
They're just going to hold it till they get a great shot, you know, and again, defensively, just trapping people and locking people down. And we don't see a lot of foes in the Centennial that might be able to overtake that in terms of scoring.
Again, we mentioned that Rampart undefeated, and I think they've established themselves as a title contender now. They hung 106 on Coronado a week and a half ago. Then they put up 108 against Liberty. I know those aren't top echelon teams in that Colorado Springs Metro League, but you go over 105 back-to-back weeks.
Right. Yeah, I saw
you're
that.
doing something right.
A couple of times in the century mark. You mentioned the Colorado Springs Metro. You know, the test for Rampart, that baby's coming up because we got Palmer on Saturday for Coach Sinclair and his squad, then Fountain Fort Carson, Doherty, and Palmer again. Yep. So we'll find out soon for the Rams.
That's a very, very good league. And speaking of Palmer, let's take a look at the top 10 again. It run down 6 through 10. And you notice you don't see Palmer in the top 10. You say, well, how can that be? They knocked off Fountain Fort Carson. Yeah, they did, but they also followed up that win with a loss to Doherty last week. And again, that's a good Doherty basketball team that Dan McKiernan has. But Lincoln into that top 10. They sit at number 6. There's Chatfield and there's Montbello. They're kind of dropping at a steady pace right now. They lose yet again. Again, they lost last week to knock them off the perch of undefeated teams to Highlands Ranch. Then they lose to a sub-500 Gateway team here this past week. I know that was a score that shocked a lot of people.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out what's going on. And another test is coming up with kind of a scary team in the Monarch Coyotes. So after losing to Gateway, Coach Carey and his squad got to step up against Monarch and still kind of progress through that Denver Prep League. We mentioned Chatfield where, you know, now they're playing exclusively Jeffco. Are they going to lose again? Maybe not. Lincoln, you know, we put them in because now you can't ignore them. There was that amazing win over Aurora Central. Lincoln's got some serious wins on the resume against Highlands Ranch, Fairview, Boulder, and again the Aurora Central with the Beta and Sean Williams, Coach Valdez. Just a 2-loss team. They're good again.
Yeah, how about that win over Aurora Central? 108-105, 3 overtimes. And the lead kid from Aurora Central, I know we've had a chance to see him. He's a big kid, went for 47 in that game.
Isn't that nuts? He's a great shot blocker. We had a game against Cherokee Trail where he showed us his stuff defensively, but obviously with Joe Abrams out a little bit, their leading scorer, big kid, to say had to step up, and he obviously got it done, but Lincoln got the victory.
So again, Palmer now on the outside looking in, but the Terrors certainly can be right back in the top 10 here at CET Sports. We'll have their rematch with Fountain Fort Carson a little bit later on in the year. That time, this next matchup, I should say, will be at Palmer High School. All right, well, that's a look at the 5A boys top 10 to the 5A girls top 10. And no change at the top as Thunder Ridge remains ranked number 1 in the state. There's Highlands Ranch, and I think there's some debate amongst some folks that follow 5A girls basketball on which one of those two teams is actually the better team. We'll find out a little bit later on here in the year. Legacy, the only undefeated team of the conference, Monarch, and then we have Denver East there at number 5. Denver East is loaded with talent.
Yeah, D1 talent and Shea Kelly, and they beat some people, and we've got to watch out for them when we come tourney time. Highlands Ranch had a little bit of a scare from Regis, huh? You know, it looked like after, you know, shutting down Regis to just 4 points in a second quarter, all of a sudden a 28-point fourth quarter for the Lady Raiders kind of scared Highlands Ranch, but, you know, great free throw shooting from Tiara Shumpert, 10 of 14 in that fourth quarter, got them over the top. But, you know, with those top two squads, Thunder Raids, Highlands Ranch, you're just kind of looking for, is anybody going to challenge them? And they got a little bit there, did the Falcons.
And then you look at Legacy with obviously Noonan and Moreland, a couple of Division I players. And then there's Monarch. And we will have Legacy versus Monarch coming up later on this week. That game is at Monarch High School. Those two teams have already hooked up once. It was a non-league affair. Legacy beat them by a point, so it'll be a very good rematch. You can check for that on CET Sports. 6 through 10 in girls basketball. Heritage, they just suffered a setback to Denver East. That's why we have the Angels above them. Fairview, you can't ignore that 12-1 record. And then Chaparral, boy, would they love to have Sam Martin back at some point. Grand Junction Central back into the top 10. And a big welcome to Air Academy. Those Cadets, just the one loss, playing in a pretty good Colorado Springs Metro League. They knocked off Palmer, one of our top 10 teams earlier this season, by 25. They deserve to get a little recognition in the top 10.
Yeah, kind of cool for the Lady Cadets to jump up in the top 10. And definitely Grand Junction Central representing the Western Slope. Nice for them to get back in. Obviously, the record shows. And they got the top scorer in all of Class 5A, and Amy came at 25 a game.
Yep.
So that'll get some notice.
Yeah, it certainly will. And again, we're going to have 2 girls games coming up this week. We talked to you about that Monarch and Legacy game, but we will also have Ponderosa taking on Littleton, another Continental League affair, and a boys game coming up this week as Grandview takes on Overland. That's a 9-4 Overland team. It's tough to tell just exactly where they are. They suffered a setback earlier this week to the Mullen Mustangs, but you know, this is also a team that knocked off Lincoln earlier in the year, so it's tough to tell what Ron Garcia Ortiz's team will do coming up, but we'll have them in Centennial League basketball. For Marty Cesario, I'm Brian Roth. Another week of CET Sports Top 10s. Check back with us next Monday.